There are moments in history when the ordinary world stands completely still. A quiet afternoon, a closed door, a forgotten village hidden in the hills of southern Italy. Nothing unusual, nothing dramatic, just another Good Friday passing like the ones before it. Yet on this day, inside a small room lit only by a flickering candle, something was taking place that no one could explain. No one in that village could have guessed that what happened in this hidden convent would one day be read again in a restless world. A world like ours. A world in the year 2025, full of noise, confusion, and a strange feeling that something is coming. The year was nearing its end. The hour was early afternoon. The streets outside were empty. The sound of children faded in the distance. A warm wind touched the shutters and made them tremble. The world remained peaceful. But inside the convent, where a humble nun was kneeling in prayer, the atmosphere felt charged with a silent tension, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Her name was Elena Aiello. To the world, she was only a religious sister who cared for orphaned girls. To her community, she was a woman who worked tirelessly, who prayed deeply, who spoke softly, and who never once sought attention. She avoided admiration. She avoided praise. She avoided anything that could distract her from her calling. But on Good Friday, everything changed. As the hour approached 3 in the afternoon, a strange sensation pressed against her heart. A coldness that was not cold. A warmth that was not warm. It was something entirely different, like an invisible hand resting on her chest. She tried to continue her prayer, but her body grew heavy, as if the weight of something unseen was falling upon her. A faint glow rose around her, not bright enough to fill the room, yet strong enough to draw her attention. She lowered her eyes, wondering if she was imagining it. She could feel something stirring within her, a whisper of sorrow, a shadow of love, a presence. Then the pain began. It did not strike suddenly. It started as a trembling in her hands, then a deep ache that traveled up her arms. She gasped and leaned forward, gripping the edge of a wooden table. The candle flame shook violently. The small crucifix on the wall seemed to tremble. Her breath grew shallow. Tears filled her eyes without warning. She pressed her forehead into her palms and whispered a single sentence, "I am here." The room darkened, even though the candle still burned. A silence fell so complete that even the sound of her heartbeat seemed to vanish. And then she saw him, not with her eyes, not with her imagination, but with something deeper and more real than vision. A figure, wounded and bleeding, stood before her, his head lowered, his body trembling, his face filled with a sorrow that words could never express, his hands extended as if offering the world a love it no longer wanted. She tried to speak, but her voice failed her. He spoke first. "Behold, my child, look at what the sins of man have done." His voice was gentle, yet it carried a weight that shook her whole being. She felt every word as if it were carved into her soul. She saw the marks on his body, the wounds in his hands, the gash in his side. Her skin burned, her heart pounded. She felt as if the suffering that belonged to him was being placed upon her, and then the pain pierced her. It was sharp and deep, as if invisible nails were pressing into her flesh. She gasped again. Her arms shook. Warm liquid slid down her wrists. When she looked, she saw blood forming lines across her skin, thin at first, then flowing more freely. The marks of Christ. The wounds that had once been his, now appearing on her own hands. She tried to stand, but her legs failed her. She collapsed to her knees. Her forehead touched the cold floor. Tears mixed with blood on her fingers. She felt no fear, only a vast and overwhelming sorrow. a sorrow so deep it seemed to run through the world itself. She did not know it yet, but the messages that began in this small, silent room would reach far beyond her own time. And in a distant year, in a world like ours, people would look back on her words and ask a simple, trembling question. Did she see us coming? Outside, the village continued its quiet routine. Doors opened. Bread was needed. Mothers called to their children. Life moved forward, unaware that in a small room within a forgotten convent, a woman who never asked to be seen was reliving the passion of Christ in her own flesh. The figure before her continued speaking. The world has forgotten love. The world has forgotten mercy. The world has turned away. His voice softened, but the weight of his sorrow pressed deeper into her soul. Elena, I need souls who will suffer with me. I need hearts that will pray for those who no longer pray. I need voices willing to speak when the world refuses to listen. She wanted to answer, but her lips would not move. Her body felt swallowed by a fire that gave no heat, a love that gave no comfort, a force so powerful it seemed to burn through every layer of her being. At last, she forced out a whisper, "Lord, I am here." The vision faded. The candle steadied. The room breathed again. The air softened, but the wounds remained. Blood slid calmly from her hands, falling in slow, deliberate drops onto the wooden floor. She touched her forehead with trembling fingers, unsure if she was awake or still separated from the world she knew. She felt weak, empty, drained. Yet deep inside the exhaustion, there was a strange peace, the peace of obedience, the peace that comes only when a soul whispers yes to something far greater than itself. She knew, in that moment, that her life had split in two. What came before was gone. What lay ahead was a path she had not chosen, but could no longer refuse. This Good Friday was not a moment of private suffering. It was a call, a mission, a doorway she had crossed without knowing where it led. From this day forward, she would witness things no one wished to see. She would carry messages no one wanted to hear. She would suffer for people who would never know her name, and speak for a heaven that refused to abandon a world drifting toward darkness. She rose unsteadily, her hands still bleeding. She looked at the crucifix on the wall, and for the first time in her life, she understood it, not as a symbol, but as a living truth, a truth demanding everything. She whispered into the empty room, "Lord, whatever you ask, I will do." Outside, the world went on, as if nothing had happened, but a story had begun. A story that would echo across decades. A story that would be reread in moments of crisis. A story that feels unsettlingly relevant now, in the uneasy landscape of 2025. Before the visions, before the wounds, before the world whispered her name in fear and wonder, there was only a child. A small girl in the narrow streets of Montalto a Fugo, a quiet village in the southern mountains of Calabria. She was not born into greatness. She came from a humble family that battled long winters and uncertain harvests. Faith in that village was not learned from books, but from whispered prayers and stories passed down beside a warm fire. Even as a child, Elena carried a gentleness that did not belong to the earth. She did not chase the other children. She did not daydream of celebrations or festivals. She slipped into the silence of the village church and stayed there, motionless, her hands folded, her eyes fixed on the crucifix with a seriousness that unsettled even grown men. Her mother often found her praying when she thought she would be playing. And when asked why, the child would simply say that she liked speaking with Jesus. No drama, no performance. Just a heart already drawn to a love the world had not taught her. But innocence rarely escapes trial. and the gentle moments of her childhood faded into years marked by illness, suffering, and a vow that would one day change the course of her life. And perhaps, as many now wonder, speak into the very age we live in. At a young age, she fell seriously ill. Doctors came and went. Remedies were tried. Days passed with no improvement. Nights were restless as her family watched over her, fearing the worst. The illness grew so severe that at one point she was thought to be dying. Elena herself felt her strength leaving her. She could barely move. Her voice was faint. Her eyes flickered like a candle about to be extinguished. Yet even in that weakness, she prayed. One night, as her pain grew unbearable, she whispered a small promise. It was not dramatic. It was not loud. She simply said that if God allowed her to recover, she would devote her life entirely to Him. Little did she know that this quiet vow would become the foundation of everything she would later experience. The next morning, her condition shifted. The fever eased. Her strength began to return. Doctors were astonished. Her family wept with relief. Elena herself knew something profound had taken place. She felt as if an invisible hand had lifted her from the edge of death. She remembered her promise, and she intended to honor it. Her recovery was followed by a deepening of her inner life. She became even more withdrawn from the noise of the world and more drawn to prayer. Her eyes carried a calm that seemed older than her age. Her steps were soft. Her words were few. People would speak to her and feel strangely comforted, as though her presence alone carried something of heaven within it. But being chosen often means being misunderstood. Some people looked at her with admiration. Others looked with suspicion. Her devotion seemed too intense, too pure, too different. Children her age did not understand her. Many adults did not understand her. Yet none of this altered her path. Years passed, and Elena entered religious life. She longed for nothing except to belong to God completely. She joined the Daughters of the Precious Blood, hoping to spend her days in quiet prayer. But even here life did not unfold as she expected. A severe illness returned. Pain seized her body in waves. Her superiors feared she might die. She was forced to leave the order, not because her heart lacked courage, but because her body could not endure the strain. Leaving religious life broke her heart. She wept silently in prayer for days, asking God why He had opened the door only to close it again. She felt useless. She felt lost. Yet in her soul, she sensed that her journey was not ending. Something was preparing her. Something unseen was guiding her toward a mission she could not yet understand. During this time, she began caring for orphaned girls. She found an old building that had once been a home and began transforming it into a refuge. She had no money. She had no resources. She had only faith. But faith, when carried by a soul like hers, becomes a force that moves mountains. People were drawn to her work. Donations arrived unexpectedly. Volunteers came to help. And soon the humble house became something extraordinary. A place where children who had known abandonment learned peace, safety, and love. Elena did not simply run the home. She lived with the girls. She cooked with them. She prayed with them. She mended their clothes with her own hands. She stayed awake beside their beds during storms. She was a mother, a friend, a guide, and a constant presence of hope. The girls loved her. They followed her everywhere. They trusted her completely. They saw something in her that they could not name, something that made them feel protected and valued. But beneath that gentle exterior, a spiritual storm was forming. Her prayer life deepened. Her nights grew longer. She often prayed on the cold floor long after everyone had fallen asleep. She felt drawn into a mystery that both comforted and unsettled her. She experienced moments of profound interior silence, as if the entire world faded away and only God remained. Then came the whispers. Not words, not visions, just a sensation that something was approaching. Something that would not allow her to remain hidden. Something that would draw her into spiritual battles she never imagined. It began with small signs. Strange heaviness during prayer. Sudden waves of sorrow that came without explanation. Dreams that felt more like warnings than memories. She did not speak of these things to anyone. She feared misunderstanding. She feared pride. Above all, she feared misleading others. But she sensed that her vow from childhood was beginning to unfold. The hours before her first major vision were filled with a restlessness she could not explain. Her heart beat faster. Her thoughts grew sharper. She felt as if someone were calling her from a great distance, not with sound, but with presence. She knelt before the crucifix one evening, unaware that everything she knew about her life was about to change. She closed her eyes. Her body trembled. Her breath caught, and in the stillness that followed, she felt a presence stronger than anything she had ever known. This was the beginning of the mission she had unknowingly prepared for since childhood, the mission that would lift her from obscurity and place her among the most mysterious figures in modern mystical history. Her life would never again belong only to herself. It would become a channel for messages that would echo far beyond the walls of her small refuge. Messages the world would struggle to accept. Messages she herself would carry with trembling hands and a wounded heart. She opened her eyes, and the visions began. The first visions did not arrive like storms. They arrived quietly, almost gently, as though heaven wished to prepare her before revealing the weight of what she would soon carry. It began on another Good Friday. The morning was cool. A soft fog lay over the village, giving the streets a ghostly stillness. Elena woke before dawn. She knelt on the small stone floor of her room, wrapped in silence, feeling a heaviness in her spirit. It was not sadness. It was not fear. It was something deeper, a quiet awareness that something was approaching. She touched the crucifix she always wore and whispered a simple prayer, "Guide me." The hours passed slowly. By noon, she felt a strange warmth spreading through her body, the same warmth she had felt months earlier. She tried to rise, but her legs trembled. She leaned against the wall, breathing carefully, as though the air had grown heavy around her. Then the pain returned, not the sharp pain of illness, but a sorrow that seemed to come from another place. A sorrow that did not belong to her. A sorrow that wrapped itself around her heart until she could barely breathe. She sank to her knees. Her hands began to tremble. She pressed them against the floor, and when she lifted them again, thin lines of blood marked her palms. Her vision blurred. The candle beside her flickered wildly. She felt the room tilt, as if the world itself were bending. And then, in an instant, everything went still. The air grew warm. The darkness deepened. The silence became absolute. A presence filled the room. She did not need to open her eyes to know who was there. She felt a love so immense that it eclipsed every pain, every fear, every thought. A light rose before her, not seen but known, and with it came a voice that resonated through her entire being. "Elena!" She lifted her head. The light intensified. She could feel her heartbeat slowing, as if being gently steadied. She felt held, embraced, understood. The voice continued. "The world has forgotten the path. The world no longer listens. I need souls who will stand with me." She felt tears sliding down her face. Not her tears, not her sorrow, his. The vision unfolded not like an image, but like a truth that entered her without effort. She felt the pain of Christ in her own flesh, not as punishment, but as an invitation to share in a love so complete that it was willing to suffer for every soul. Her arms burned. Blood rose again from the wounds in her hands, but she did not cry out. She felt an overwhelming compassion that lifted her far above the pain. Then the vision broadened. She saw shadows passing over the world. Cities filled with noise and confusion. Families torn by arguments. Children lost in darkness. Nations drifting farther and farther from God. It was not a vision of hatred. It was a vision of distance, a world walking away from the very love that could save it. The voice spoke again. Men no longer recognize mercy. Their hearts have grown cold. Their eyes no longer see the light. She pressed her palms to her face and sobbed. It was as if the sorrow of heaven had entered her body. She felt the weight of human forgetfulness, the loneliness of divine love that reaches out and finds no response. The light dimmed for a moment, then brightened again. Another presence entered the room, softer, gentler, filled with maternal tenderness. She knew instantly who it was. The Virgin stood before her, clothed in deep sorrow, yet radiant with beauty. Her eyes glistened as though carrying centuries of tears. "My daughter," she whispered, her voice trembling with compassion. "Listen carefully. The world is suffering because it has forgotten God. My heart is pierced, again and again, by the sins of my children." Elena felt her own heart trembling. The Virgin drew closer and placed a hand over her head. A sense of warmth moved through her, lifting the pain for a moment. "I will help you," the Virgin continued. "You will speak when I ask you to speak. You will warn when I tell you to warn. You will pray for those who no longer pray." Elena did not respond. She could only bow her head. The Virgin continued. "Many souls are in danger. Many hearts have grown distant. But heaven does not abandon its children. Even in the darkest hours, grace is near." The room filled with a fragrance like flowers blooming at night. A soft wind brushed her face, though the windows were closed. The Virgin withdrew slowly, leaving behind a sense of peace that wrapped itself around Elena like a mantle. Then the light vanished. The room returned to its silence. The air cooled. The candle flickered back to its normal size, and Elena collapsed onto the floor, exhausted, trembling, overwhelmed. She did not move for several minutes. She lay with her cheek pressed against the stone, letting the weight of the experience settle into her bones. Her hands still bled, but the pain had become distant, almost unreal. She finally rose to her knees. She looked at her hands with quiet disbelief. She touched her face where the tears had fallen. She knew now, with absolute clarity, that she had crossed a threshold. There was no going back. Heaven had spoken. Heaven had chosen her. Heaven had placed upon her a mission she could neither refuse nor fully understand. She whispered a single sentence into the empty room. "Lord, guide me." From that day forward, the visions intensified. They came in moments of prayer. They came in the quiet hours of night. They came during Mass. They came when she least expected them. Each one carried a message not only for her, but for the world. And though no one around her yet understood what she had been called to carry, the path ahead was already forming before her. A path of suffering, a path of obedience, a path where heaven would speak through her to a world that no longer wished to listen. This was the true beginning of her mission, and it would soon lead her into revelations that would shake her soul to its core. The visions continued, each one deeper than the last, each one carrying a weight that pressed heavily on Elena's soul. But to understand why heaven was speaking so urgently, one must understand the world that surrounded her. Elena lived through one of the most violent chapters of human history. Her life stretched across wars, revolutions, and the rise of ideologies that reshaped the modern age. The world seemed to be tearing itself apart, and every conflict left another scar across the earth. When Elena was born, Italy was struggling through political chaos and poverty. When she grew older, the First World War erupted, sweeping across Europe like a storm that consumed everything in its path. Millions were killed. Entire cities were destroyed. Families vanished. Nations were left trembling in ruin. Elena watched mothers weep for sons who never returned. She heard the distant cries of soldiers who had lost limbs, homes, and hope. She saw the spiritual emptiness that followed the conflict, as if humanity had been drained of its ability to trust, to love, to believe. Years later, the Second World War arrived, fiercer and darker than the first. Italy was thrown into violence and fear. Bombs fell, cities burned. Families hid in cellars praying the walls would hold. The sound of marching boots echoed through the streets. Elena witnessed the suffering of children who had already known too much pain. The world changed again after the war. A new tension rose across continents. Nations formed alliances. Ideologies clashed. Scientists built weapons more destructive than anything ever imagined. The Cold War began, and the entire planet seemed caught between two giants staring at each other across a void of mistrust. People spoke of peace, yet every newspaper carried an undercurrent of fear. People spoke of progress, yet families grew more fractured. People spoke of freedom, yet hearts felt weighed down by uncertainty. The world was advancing in technology, but fading in faith. Something essential had been lost. This was the world heaven asked Elena to speak to. It was not a world of simple troubles. It was a world standing on the brink of a spiritual collapse. The rise of materialism, the spread of ideologies that denied God, the glorification of personal desire, and the increasing dismissal of moral law formed a storm far greater than any war. Elena saw it clearly, not with the eyes of a scholar, not with political knowledge, but with a soul that felt the tremor of every spiritual wound. She saw the way families drifted away from the innocence they once held. She saw youth seduced by new distractions, new vices, new forms of rebellion. She saw the church attacked both from without and from within. She saw people no longer turning to prayer, but to despair. And in every vision, she was shown the same truth. Humanity was forgetting God. One afternoon, exhausted from caring for the orphaned girls, Elena knelt in the chapel. She closed her eyes and prayed for the world with all the strength she had. Her body trembled. Her mind swirled with uncertainty. Then the room changed. The air grew thick. The silence deepened. A soft light filled the chapel. She felt a familiar presence. The voice she had come to know so well spoke once more. "Elena, the world is moving away from the light. Hearts have become cold. Families no longer pray. Many souls are lost in confusion." She felt tears gathering in her eyes. The voice continued, "You must pray for them. You must offer your suffering for them. And when the moment comes, you must carry my messages to those who will listen." Elena wanted to answer, but her voice failed. She felt a profound sadness, not her own, but the sadness of heaven itself. A sadness for a world that no longer understood the value of the human soul. The vision shifted. She saw crowds rushing through busy streets, their faces filled with worry and distraction. She saw families arguing. She saw children left alone without guidance. She saw churches half empty and countless people chasing illusions, forgetting the meaning of life itself. The Virgin Mother appeared again, her eyes filled with sorrow. "My daughter," she said, "the world is losing the sense of God. People have filled their lives with noise. They seek happiness in things that cannot satisfy. They have forgotten prayer. They have forgotten love. They have forgotten mercy." Her voice trembled. If humanity does not return to God, suffering will deepen. Hearts will become harder. Nations will turn against each other, and the world will enter a darkness of its own making. Elena knelt silently. The weight of the message pressed heavily upon her, yet she felt a strange peace beneath it, a peace that flowed from obedience. The Virgin continued, "But heaven does not abandon its children. Even in their forgetfulness, even in their rebellion, even in their weakness, grace is still offered. It is offered again and again, waiting for open hearts." The vision faded. The chapel returned to its quiet stillness. Elena remained kneeling, her hands folded tightly, her head bowed. She understood now that her mission was not born from anger or fear. It was born from love, a love so vast that it could not bear to see a single soul lost. The warnings she received were not punishments. They were invitations, calls to return, calls to awaken, calls to rediscover the path that leads to peace. But as the world drifted further away from God, the visions began to take on a tone that was no longer gentle. They grew more urgent, more vivid, more sorrowful. Humanity was standing before a choice, a crossroads that would shape its future. And Elena was being prepared to speak for heaven at a time when few were willing to listen. She rose slowly from the chapel floor, her body weak, but her spirit steady. She knew the messages ahead would be heavy. She knew the visions would grow darker. She knew she would suffer more than she could imagine. But she also knew one truth above all others. When heaven speaks, the world must listen. Even if it listens only through the voice of a hidden nun from Calabria. More was coming, and she would soon be shown what that more meant. The visions did not ease with time. They intensified. Each one arrived with a new weight, a new urgency, as if heaven were pulling back a veil that Elena never asked to see behind. What she witnessed was not meant to frighten. It was meant to awaken. Yet even she, with all her strength, trembled each time the light returned and the voice spoke her name. It began during a night of prayer. The convent was silent. The girls were asleep. The moon rested over the rooftops like a silver watchman. Elena remained in the chapel alone, kneeling with her forehead pressed to the pew. Her prayer was simple. "Lord, guide the world back to you." The candle before her flickered, then steadied. The air shifted. A soft glow rose behind the altar, spreading until it filled the room with a light that did not belong to this world. She felt her heartbeat slow. Her breath deepened. A familiar presence wrapped itself around her soul. "Elena," the voice said, "listen." The chapel dissolved into a vision. She found herself standing on the edge of a vast plain. The sky above her had grown dark, thick with clouds that moved like restless shadows. A distant rumble echoed across the horizon. She watched cities appear one by one, countless lights glowing beneath the night sky. But those lights dimmed, one after another, as if something unseen passed over them. She heard voices traveling through the air, arguments, confusion, families yelling behind closed doors, children crying in distant rooms, nations speaking with anger, leaders speaking with pride, churches struggling to hold their ground against a rising tide of indifference. "Elena," the voice continued, "the world has forgotten its soul." She felt an ache spread across her chest. The vision expanded. She saw storms forming above oceans, great waves rising like mountains, tremors moving through the earth, fires in distant fields, not as punishments, but as reflections of a world losing its balance, a world that had turned its heart away from the light that once guided it. Then came scenes that struck at her heart. She saw families drifting apart, love fading into silence. She saw children wandering through streets lit by neon lights, searching for something they could not name. She saw people chasing pleasure, as if it would save them from emptiness. She saw faith growing cold in the hearts of millions. The Virgin appeared beside her. Her face was filled with sorrow, but not despair. She looked upon the world as a mother looks upon her wounded children. "My daughter," she said, "this is the pain that heaven sees. Souls wandering without direction, families falling without prayer, nations rising without God." Elena felt tears slip down her cheeks. The Virgin pointed toward the horizon. There, Elena saw a vast darkness taking shape. Not a physical darkness, a spiritual one. A quiet force that spread through thoughts, desires, and beliefs. She saw people losing hope. She saw hearts closing. She saw confusion replacing truth. The Virgin's voice grew soft. "Many are walking toward the shadows without knowing it. They believe they are strong. They believe they are free. But their hearts are far from God, and without God the world grows cold." The vision changed again. Now she saw a great tension moving across nations. A pressure building beneath the surface of the world, like a storm gathering before the first drop of rain. Leaders argued. People protested. Anger rose. Trust vanished. She saw countries turning against each other even as they spoke of peace. The voice of Christ returned, filled with sorrow, yet carrying an unbreakable strength. "The world is approaching a time of trial," he said. "Not because heaven desires suffering, but because humanity has chosen to live without the light." Elena felt a trembling in her hands. The wounds from earlier visions opened again, streams of blood falling silently onto the ground beneath her. She did not look at them. Her eyes remained fixed on the scenes unfolding before her. Christ continued, "Warn them, Elena. Tell them that the path they walk leads to deep suffering if they do not return to God." She felt fear rise in her chest, not fear for herself, but fear for the world. She wanted to speak. She wanted to plead with heaven for more time. She wanted to offer herself entirely if it would ease even one moment of human sorrow. Before she could speak, the Virgin touched her shoulder. "Do not lose hope," the Virgin said. "These visions show what may come if hearts remain closed. But hearts can still open. Grace still flows. Mercy still calls." The vision grew brighter. She saw small lights scattered across the world. Souls still praying. Families still kneeling together. Children whispering prayers before sleep. Hidden people offering quiet sacrifices. Priests giving their whole lives for the flock. Mothers teaching their children to love God. Old men praying rosaries in empty fields. These lights pierced the darkness. They held it back. They proved that humanity was not lost. The Virgin smiled gently. "The world is wounded, but it is not abandoned. Heaven still reaches for it. Heaven still fights for it. Heaven still calls it home." The vision began to fade. The darkness dissolved. The plane disappeared. The chapel returned. Elena found herself kneeling again, exhausted, her hands trembling, her face wet with tears she did not remember shedding. She pressed her forehead to the floor. The weight of the warnings remained inside her, but so did the warmth of the hope she had been shown. She knew now that the visions were not a prophecy of doom, but a call to awaken. A call to choose the light before the shadows grew deeper. She rose slowly, still trembling, and whispered into the quiet chapel, "Lord, if you want me to carry this, I will carry it." Her mission was clear now. She would speak. She would pray. She would suffer for those who never prayed for themselves. What she did not yet know was that the visions ahead would strike at the very heart of the church she loved. And she would soon witness scenes that would leave her trembling in ways she had never experienced before. The warnings about the world were heavy, but the visions that followed struck far deeper. They touched the very heart of the faith Elena loved more than her own life, and they broke her spirit in ways nothing else ever had. It began on a night when the convent was wrapped in silence. The wind outside rattled the windows. A distant bell echoed across the village. Elena was alone in the chapel again, her hands folded, her eyes closed. She had grown accustomed to the weight of her mission, but she had no idea that heaven was about to reveal something far more painful than anything she had yet seen. She felt it before she saw it, a pressure in her chest, a sinking in her stomach. The air thinned, and the candlelight dimmed as though an unseen hand had cupped itself over the flame. She opened her eyes, but saw only darkness. Then the voice of Christ filled the chapel. "Elena, what you will see now concerns my church. Be prepared." She bowed her head. The vision opened not with light, but with shadows swirling across a vast city. She recognized it immediately. The dome rising above the skyline, the ancient walls, the familiar basilicas. It was Rome, but not the Rome she had seen in pilgrimages or photographs. This Rome felt wounded, heavy, almost trembling. The sky above it had grown thick and colorless, like the calm before a storm that carries an old sorrow. She saw the Vatican standing in silence. But something was wrong. The air around it felt tense, like a heartbeat racing beneath the skin of the city. Crowds moved restlessly in the streets. Their faces were troubled, their voices low and filled with confusion. The ancient stones that had witnessed centuries of faith now seemed to hold their breath. Then Elena saw the Pope. He was alone in a dim room, kneeling before a small crucifix. His shoulders trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of an invisible burden. His face was gentle, yet marked by sorrow. The lines of exhaustion on his forehead revealed a man carrying the cross of millions. He prayed in whispers, his words filled with love for a world that no longer listened. "My children," he murmured, "return to God. Return before you are lost." Suddenly the scene shifted. A violent noise erupted from the streets. Shouts rose. Footsteps thundered. Elena's heart tightened. A crowd surged toward the Vatican walls, pushing forward with anger that burned like fire. They moved with the force of a restless tide. She could not see their faces clearly, only their rage. The gates trembled under the pressure. The Pope continued praying inside, unaware of the storm gathering outside his door. The vision shifted again. This time she found herself inside a vast hall, where confusion and division tore through the church like a sudden wind. She saw arguments among people who once prayed together. She saw misunderstandings growing like thorns in a garden. She saw faith weakening in those called to protect it. The Virgin appeared at her side, her face pale with sorrow, her eyes shimmering with tears. "My daughter," she said, "the church is wounded not only by the world, but by those within it who have forgotten love." Elena felt her breath catch. The enemy desires to divide. He desires to confuse. He desires to wound the shepherd so he can scatter the flock. The vision darkened again. She saw the Pope once more, still praying, still alone. The crowd burst inside the building. Doors slammed open. Voices filled the hallways. Elena watched helplessly as figures approached the Holy Father. They seized him with rough hands. They shouted words she could not hear but felt in her bones. They forced him to the ground. Elena cried out, trying to rush forward, but she had no body in the vision. She could not touch him. She could not reach him. She could only watch. The Pope fell to the floor. They pulled him by his arms. They struck him. They mocked him. Elena felt each blow in her own soul. as though the wounds of the Pope had become her wounds. Her tears fell without stopping. She whispered brokenly, "Lord, please protect him." The Virgin stepped forward. In a motion filled with divine power, she extended her mantle over the Pope. A burst of light swept through the hall. The attackers fell to the ground like lifeless shadows. The Pope rose slowly, leaning into the comforting arms of the Mother of God. "Do not fear," she said to him. "Heaven is with you." The Pope pressed his forehead into her mantle and whispered a silent prayer. The Virgin turned to Elena. "My daughter, the Church will suffer, but it will not fall. Storms will rise. Confusion will spread. Many will lose their way, but the light will not be extinguished. The truth will not be lost. The shepherd will not be abandoned." The vision continued. She saw dark flags falling from the heights of Rome. She saw buildings trembling under pressure. She saw the faithful scattered, unsure of where to turn. She saw the Church walking through a night as dark as any in its history. But then she saw something else, a small flame. It appeared first in one heart, then another, a quiet faith that refused to die. A single moment of prayer that illuminated a village. A whispered rosary that reached heaven from an old woman's trembling lips. A priest offering mass in a humble chapel that survived every storm. The flame spread, not like fire that destroys, but like fire that warms, fire that gathers. Christ appeared again. "Elena," he said, "the darkness in the world may grow, but my Church carries a light that nothing can destroy. It will be wounded, but it will rise. It will be tested, but it will endure. For I am with it until the end of time." Her life proves that holiness is not reserved for the extraordinary. It grows in those who love intensely, who serve quietly, who surrender completely. And her final message, the message she wanted the world to remember, is carved silently into the memory of everyone who studies her life. Return to God, not out of fear, but out of love. For in the end, that is the truth at the heart of every warning she received, every vision she carried, every wound she bore. A God who does not abandon, a mother who intercedes endlessly, a mercy that rises even when darkness seems strongest. Her story invites the world to look beyond fear, beyond confusion, beyond suffering, and to see the light that never fades. The light of a God who waits, who calls, who forgives, who loves, and through the life of a simple nun hidden in the hills of Calabria, that light continues to shine across the world.